And welcome to this version of Chip Talks, sponsored by Treat the Cause. If you wonder what Treat the Cause is, we're beginning to build that out. You can find more information at treatthecause.expert, and that will be a developing thing. We're also sponsored by True Medics Nutrition, that's truemedics.com, and Neighborly Nutrition, which is neighborlynutrition.com. Please help us by helping support these brands. This is important efforts that we're involved in, and we use all of these things to try to help you with your health, including this education. Okay, so today we're going to talk about magnets, and this is probably one of the most important chip talks I can do, and this is one that we've been leading up to. So this may not seem real exciting, magnets and, what do they have to do with your health? Well, they have quite a bit to do with your health, and they also have quite a bit to do with just how things work in the universe. So even if you're not listening to Chip Talks, let's say, for your health concerns, let's say you're an engineer, or let's say you're a mechanic, or let's say you're, just trying to figure out a better way to do things. Well, understanding kind of the core and fundamental principles of the universe is always pretty important stuff. So, to me, and again, this is just in my world, in my paradigm, it looks like we've been lied to quite a bit. And, how we view the world and how we sort of claim the world is assembled is pretty important to just our understanding of everything. So, if you don't have a core understanding of physics or any of that, again, we can't really build an electric vehicle. We can't build any kind of vehicle. We can't, create a reaction. We can't explain why things happen. So rather than just being subjected to the randomness of the world, it's better for us to figure things out, box them in, and explain them. But when we look at, situations like magnetism, hopefully this is going to be pretty eye opening to some of you guys. So we need to cover this ground, though. This is important in where I'm trying to take you guys in sort of, let's say, a vision or theory of where we could go, of human health, of how you work, of how we can fix ourselves, of how we can become healthy and all really God wants us to be. And God doesn't want us to be, I don't think, infected with a bunch of bacteria or, basically sick. God wants us to thrive. And in order to thrive, we've got to understand how we work a little bit better. And part of that is magnetism. And guess what creates magnetism? That's right, boys and girls, the big shiny ball in the sky called the sun. So the sun hits the earth. As the sun hits the earth, it causes the earth to spin. As electrons spin, that causes electricity, that causes ionization, that causes energy, that causes a magnetic field that's around the earth. So this representation down here is a pretty good, where's my cursor? There it is. This is a pretty good representation of the Earth's magnetic field and kind of what it looks like. So it's not as, let's say, simple as we would like to think that it is. It's got some intricacies there, but that's kind of what it looks like. And again, because the Earth has a magnetic field, and because everything comes from the sun. All right, so everything. If I have a piece of metal, so do I have a piece of metal on my desk anywhere? I don't see one. Let's say I've got metal in this pen, all right? So where did that metal come from? Well, ultimately, this metal came from hydrogen from the sun, okay? And as hydrogen dissipated in intensity and power, it forms like pockets, let's say, of stability that end up being elements. As those elements combine and come together, they form heavier elements. So everything kind of starts, there's actually smaller particles, smaller than hydrogen, and we're going to get into why this is important more. I just want to lay this groundwork. But there's actually smaller particles that are smaller than hydrogen even, that we don't even recognize yet, and those are actually more of the core fundamental particles in all this. But basically, you can think of this as energy dissipates, it just finds these homes of stability, and those are atoms. Those atoms will find stability by combining with other atoms, and that's kind of how things work. So it's sort of this precipitation of energy that starts at very high energetic, short bandwidths, high frequencies, and dissipates down into longer bandwidths, shorter frequencies, as it hits Earth. And that's really how this reality is completely created. So magnetism is a super important part of all of that. But again, the thing that I want you to really understand and appreciate is that the Earth just doesn't generate a magnetic field on its own. Well, kind of does. I mean, it's spinning on an iron core, which is going to create a magnetic field. But the reason it is spinning is because of the big shiny ball in the sky called the sun. And I say S-O-N rather than S-U-N. For obvious reasons, because I think that is our connection to God, and it's our connection to all these energy sources, and it's just how stuff moves, and our relationship with the sun is incredibly tight and intimate, and we really don't even appreciate the half of it. And I see this in a different way as most people do, and I don't think I even appreciate the half of it. Okay. So we have to get into a little bit of quantum mechanics. Don't let that scare you. It's not that hard to understand at all. And we've got to get into a little bit of kind of the differences between, let's say, an atom and an ion, and what creates magnetism. But we also are going to talk about electricity because it has to do with electrons, all right? So an atom over here on the left in the blue, you see that you have an atom there with two not neutrons, but protons. There we go. Gosh, hydrogen atoms. So by the way, this is just hydrogen. It's just two hydrogens glued together, okay? So that's what you get when you glue two hydrogens together. It's an element called helium, but it's just two hydrogens. So you have two protons in the nucleus there, and then you have two electrons circling. So that creates kind of a stable force, all right? So if you think of this magnetically, we know that, magnets will repel opposite sides, so you can't even push them together, right? But if you flip that magnet around, if it's a bar magnet, whap, it'll attract each other. So you have a repelling and an attracting force. And that's exactly what happens in the middle of an atom, okay? So you have you have positives, which are protons, and you have negatives, which are the electrons. And it's kind of that way. It's more complicated than that, but that's an easy way to think of it. Okay, so over here on the right, what we have is we have an ion, okay? And the difference between an atom and an ion is just the electrons. So over here we've got an electron hole. So this is He plus, I guess. So he's in need of an electron. He would accept an electron. So he's going to be a sort of they donate him as a plus because he has an electron hole. If you have solar panels, if you have solar energy at your home or your farm or ranch or whatever, the solar panels work by basically this situation where they dope these panels with holes and then let the pieces in between charge with the sun by adding protons, and they use this as the mechanism for producing solar energy. Okay, so but this is how you move electricity. So you can't really move electricity without ions or magnets. All right, inside of your body, you use ionics. So you use ions. Sodium is an ion, potassium is an ion, calcium is an ion, magnesium is an ion, chlorine is an ion. So salt, ionic. But anyway, this is how you move energy around inside of you. Electricity is more like if you think the electrical wires, that's more magnetic. So you have a kind of a big magnetic hand that pushes electrons down a wire. So that's kind of how that works. Okay, so what creates magnetism? Well, this is really cool. So again, we're back here. We're going to get inside of one of these atoms, and we're going to look at an electron. And an electron can spin. So an electron can spin either to the left or to the right. Okay. And if the electron spins to the right, he's got a kind of upside down situation. So he's got an upper south and lower north pole. If he spins to the left, he's got, what we think of as a bar magnet, okay? So these guys, even though they have a negative charge, so to speak, or we think of them as a negative charge, they also have a magnetic polarity, but it depends on their spin. So they can be either, let's say, plus or minus. They can be repelling or attracting, sides of the magnet. In each orbit, so basically in an orbit of an atom, and so where these electrons are around this atom is called the orbit, all right? So in the orbit, there has to be, basically, they have to be balanced. So each orbit of an atom can have two electrons, but they have to be in opposite spins. And what that does is it creates a favorable kind of magnetic situation in that shell. If you had those of the same spin, then you would have a disbalance magnetically. And that's not how magnetism works. That's everything wants to balance, everything kind of wants to form stasis, and then that's what needs to happen inside of a atom itself. But this is how magnetism happens at the smallest and core level, is which way is an electron spinning? Is it spinning to the left or is it spinning to the right? All right, so in material, the way that this happens is, again, if I can get all the electrons spinning the same way in a material, like a metal, I will magnetize that metal. So that metal will have a north and a south pole. And that metal will now act as a magnet, okay? So the way that you create a magnet is that you begin to get all the electrons in every single atom in that structure to spin the same way. Things that are not magnetic have basically its spin all over the place. So it's, uncontrolled, let's say, spin in all the atoms in that material. So some things are easier to magnetize, let's say, and the easier it is to move around the electrons, the easier kind of it is to magnetize something. Okay, so why am I taking you down this bunny trail? It's like, oh, Chip, gee, we learned all this in high school physics, please, no, not again. I had to memorize all this stuff. But this has a purpose as to your health. So first of all, I just want to show you that there's a lot of new technology that we don't hear a lot about unless you just kind of know somebody who's had it or been through something. But I actually know somebody who's been through this pulsed EMF bone healing situation. And this works, okay? So let's say you had even like an amputee, okay? But if you have a bone situation where you have not enough growth, things like that, then this is a very, very good way to reactivate cells and bones. It's a good way to re-stimulate bone. It's a good way to alter the situation of bones, okay? So, and there's really no other way to do this right now. So pulsed electromagnetic fields are very, very important in osteoporosis and bone health, and where we're going here, let's say, with how we deal with bones. Inside of you, okay, so it's super important, that we move, let's say, electricity inside of us. And the way that we do that is kind of magnetic. It's repelling and opposing forces. But we have a lot of hydrogen inside of us, and hydrogen is positively charged, meaning that it will accept an electron generally. So it has a hole. And what happens is inside of your body, inside of cells, you have a proton pumping situation, and this could be done with hydrogens, it could be done with calciums, it could be done with a lot of different things, but you basically have this situation where you've got a lot of pluses on one side and minuses on the other, and it creates this gradient. It creates a gradient. And if you're doing that at a battery, guess what that gradient is called? Voltage, okay? So, but this happens inside of us, and it creates a gradient. And as that gradient increases, there's more like attraction and repelling of things that need to get in and out of a cell. So this is the way that we control basically the permeability of our cell membranes. And it's super duper important, not necessarily always with hydrogens, but with this positive negative kind of cell situation. So the inside of a cell is always going to be negatively charged. The outside is generally positively charged. The more negative it becomes, the more obviously permeable that barrier becomes. We don't want permeable cell barriers, and this is super important to our health. And just think of this from a bacterial perspective. If I'm a bacteria, the easier your cells are to get into, the more I like it, right? So I want your cells to be super permeable to me so that I can get inside of them and do my dirty work. Well, again, what controls the permeability of cells? Electricity, ions, magnetism, right? Or we can influence this with magnetism is where I'm going. This is electric, more than anything. But it's sort of positive and negative charge, okay? And that's what controls cell wall permeability. So do you want, a castle built of sand, or do you want a castle built of rock? Well, that depends on your ability to move voltage. So I'm going to read you through this real quick because I think this is just important, and I'll kind of explain it as we go. All mammalian cells are equipped with an evolutionarily conserved membrane repair machinery that works to constantly ensure membrane integrity. So you have a mechanism, but again, this mechanism has a lot to do with how electric you are. But let's read through this. Such widespread presence throughout the human body and across species highlight that the health of membranes is of the utmost importance for cell survival. That's what I really want you to pay attention to, okay? You gotta have a healthy membrane for that cell to survive. Not only is the membrane repair response important for the maintenance of homeostasis and normal cell functioning, but failure to sustain membrane health can result in acute and chronic pathologies. Failure to sustain membrane health can result in acute and chronic pathologies. That means if you can't keep your basically cell membranes tight, then you're going to get sick, okay? This review assesses the role of membrane integrity and how it can be lost in different physiological and pathological contexts, including skeletal muscle contraction and chronic myopathies. Cardiac muscle contraction, let's see, do we need to read the rest of this? Probably not. Again, chronic inflammation is going to impact, a cell's ability to be able to keep a non-permeable membrane. So this is just super important to your health. So that's kind of what I want you to get out of this, is that the cell membranes and the ability to permeate them is super important to your health. All right, so does this have to do with voltage? Yes, it does. So voltage-dependent membrane permeability. So the action potential, the primary electric signal generated by nerve cells, reflects changes in membrane permeability to specific ions. Okay, so as basically, let's say a cell is changing voltage, that will represent through that cell wall a different access to different types of ions. So sodium does something, calcium does something, potassium does something, but this works through voltage, okay? So this works through voltage. We're taught about it through a cell will sort of express a protein on its wall and will move things in and out. And that's what happens. But there's also a voltage component to all this that's super duper important. So present understanding of membrane permeability is based on evidence obtained by the voltage clamp technique, which permits detailed characterization of permeable changes as a function of membrane potential and time. For most types of axons, these changes consist of a rapid and transient rise in the sodium Na plus permeability, followed by a slower but more prolonged rise in potassium permeability. Both permeabilities are voltage dependent, increasing as the membrane potential depolarizes. Okay, so the kinetics and voltage dependence of Na plus and K plus permeabilities provide a complete explanation of action potential generation. This is complicated, but it's not, okay? So you need to be able to move things in and out of a cell. And again, how do you do that? It's basically with electricity. It's kind of like you have one of those, electric cell wall. electric cell wall like they have in, prison cells or whatever. And you kind of, at times it's weak enough where maybe, you can get through it or not, right? So that's kind of the way that this works. The more electricity that we have, the more electricity that we're moving, the tighter these junctions are going to be, and the more ability that we have to control our bodies. How do we move and control electricity? Calcium, which is really cool, through the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so isn't that neat? All right, so if I move a magnet across a coil of wire, I'll generate a voltage, okay, in that coil. Because what I'm doing is I am attracting and moving, I'm agitating, let's say, the electrons in that wire, and that's how you create electricity. You just move electrons. Any movement of electrons will create an electric current, all right? That's all that it is. It's electrons moving. So we can, point of this, and what I want you to get out of this, is using a magnet, I can create electricity as long as I have the right sort of materials to create it in. And you are the right material to be able to create some electricity in. You have a resistance, but again, you can create a magnetic sort of flow in you. I wanted to show you this because this is just a general slide, health effects of magnets, but there's a lot of them, right? And check this out. And again, I didn't actually pre-do any of this. It's probably gonna. Okay, so look at a healthy cell here and how we've got very good around the membrane. We have good pluses and minuses, and we've got sort of attraction and repulsive forces working together. In a disease cell, look what it looks like. Yeah, all over the place, okay? What's this? Conditioned magnetic field therapy strives to bring about that, right? So the healthy cell, and I agree, condition that, whatever that is, I'm not sure exactly how they do that, but this is what we're after. And we can achieve this with magnets. And the reason that we can achieve this is because of this cell wall permeability. So when we begin to up the voltage around this cell wall, we make it less permeable, and this cell begins to better organize itself. A cell without much voltage is sort of a weak, let's say, diseased, but easy to disease cell. So a lot of stuff out here. You guys can, explore this on your own. What is leukoderma? I don't even know what that is. Anyway, you can use the North Pole of a magnet to fix it. But you guys can go out and sort of satisfy yourself that you can use magnets to do a lot of things. But the why behind this is because you're affecting basically cell wall permeability, and you're also moving electrons. So as you start moving magnets around, you're moving electrons, and that has beneficial effects because we all should be moving a lot of electrons. Now, why is, look at this. This is kind of cool. So you can affect the circulation of your blood using magnets. And so, the circulation of your blood is magnetic, which is cool. All right, so why does all this matter? Well, for this reason. And I think this is where we're headed. I certainly can, it's going to take a lot of work. It needs a lab. It needs some minions. We need to experiment on some things. We need to get some things done. But I think we can do this right now. And I think we can do this right now by there's a technology called bioresonance that we use that we're going to do we may do the chip talks next week actually on bioresonance, just kind of a deeper dive into that. But bioresonance is able to not very accurately, let's say 90%, identify things in tissue, identify status of organs, identify allergies, identify just about any kind of, let's say, health stimulation or situation that you could have cellularly. And it can do it in every single cell in your body. And it's a non-invasive technology, meaning that I don't have to stick you. So as an evaluation technology, that's looking pretty powerful. It's looking like a very powerful evaluation technology that can be made better, but it's pretty good right now. And I mean, it's pretty good right now. And those of you guys out there who've had a bioresonance, you know how good it is, and you probably know how much it's helped you and helped you gain a new insight into how you work and how you function, right? So bioresonance is a super important tool. But again, I can put you in a med bed now, and I can initiate bioresonance, and I can scan you, and kind of like in a way that we think of Star Trek with a tricorder, I can get a bunch of information about you. Now, if that information is not fed to me, let's say, let's feed it to AI, and let AI make a very, let's say, calculated and intentional decision about kind of what's going on with you. Now, let's marry this technology now. So now we've evaluated you, and we've got a pretty good look at a diagnostic, that's been put out by our AI. Now what? Well, now we need to heal you, right? Well, how do we heal you? Magnets, okay? Very, very easy to look at it. Let's say you had a bad knee or an area of inflammation in your back or something like that. Again, very easy to magnetically stimulate that area, get those cells to perk back up, get those cells to redo what they should be doing, get stem cells in that area if needed. Again, we can do all of this with magnets, okay? I looked at, if I can get, one of the problems that we have, I guess the best way to say this is that we're all bacterially infected. And it's not in our gut microbiome. We sort of should be bacterially infected there until we figure out how we should eat. But it's really in other organs. And so we might have bacteria in our liver. And when I say bacteria, I'm meaning virus, fungus, parasite, bugs. Yeah, so we might have bugs in our liver. We might have bugs in our heart. We might have bugs in our, lymphatic system, in our, urological system, right? So in our kidneys or our pancreas or whatever. So in our gallbladder even. So I've seen infected gallbladders. So these guys get around, and they get around inside of us. And if it's something like HIV, or if it's something like Epstein-Barr, H. pylori, or HPV, those guys, you can't kill them. I mean, we can't kill them right now. I know how to kill them, and this is why I'm telling you this story. So we can kill them with 222 nanometers of light. But how do I get that in your heart? How do I get 200? I guess we could catheterize and shine little LEDs, but that's really not practical right now. So a way to express 222 nanometers of light is through frequency, all right? So light is a wavelength, also has frequency, and so I can RF generate a frequency that is going to look like to your body light, but it's going to take a nuclear generator to do it. I'm going to have petahertz of frequency, and the government owns those frequencies anyway. You can't even broadcast on those frequencies. So I'm going to have to hit it in harmonics. And what that means is that I'm going to have to go to about 6 decimal places in a lower frequency in order to hit those high harmonics. Really hard to do. It's kind of what Rife did. So Royal Rife, if you study his work, that's what they were able to do, and they were able to, hit those frequencies consistent enough to show results, and that was pretty good. But it's hard to do. It's 6, 9, 12. I don't know how many digits of accuracy you need to hit, but it's significant. Let's just say. So that's kind of impractical to me. So, okay? So the way, though, that was looking like is very practical is with magnets. And again, it doesn't take much of a magnetic field to influence you. And so through magnets and really through smaller little, manipulations of magnetic fields around you, we can heal you of a lot of things. So this is where we're going. This is kind of where I've been taking you. Everything that we're doing as far as diagnostic testing, as far as ways to influence the human body, I want to be able to do it non-invasively, where you could lay in a bed like this and basically have everything done. So we're there in theory. We need to get to a lab. We need to get all this going. And again, I'm not independently wealthy, so if you want to help, that'd be great. But this is where we're headed. So anyway, wanted to lay that out. The vision is finally out there. So there you go. So everything that we'll be doing, from now forward is just kind of supporting that vision. This is why we say treat the cause, because we think we can treat the cause of most disease. And this is why we're putting sort of our very powerful, important supplements in our company called True Medics. So that's the way that, we're going to help you treat the cause. We do all this in a clinic in Ada right now called Neighborly Nutrition. We're looking at expanding our clinic idea and all these ideas into more of a thing, let's say, where, you know, you could do this in Dallas, or you could do this in, you know, New Orleans, or Florida, or wherever you want to do it in the future. So we're headed that way. You know, we certainly need help, and we need, you know, God, we think, is on our side, so we hope he is. But, you know, we can always use help, and that will help all this go faster. But med beds is where we're headed. Again, we've got a good way to fulfill that dream. So see you guys. Love you guys. Have a good weekend. 4th of July. Get out there and celebrate our republic. We live in a republic. It's a democratic republic, but it is a republic. It's not a democracy.